of the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Kincardine to order at 5 p.m. on December 7th, 2020, electronically in the council chambers at the Municipal Administration Center. So with me in the Municipal Administration Center, I have Deputy Mayor Ropel, our clerk, Jen Laurie, and our Deputy Clerk, Jen White. So I'll just take the roll call. So I'll start with Councillor Couture.
Present.
Councillor Kyler.
Present.
Councillor Glover.
Present.
Councillor Haight.
Here.
Councillor Kennedy.
Present.
Councillor Stewart.
Present.
And staff present, our CAO, Sharon Chambers.
Present.
And Roxana Bauman.
Present.
Finance. Michelle Barr, Director of Building and Planning.
Present.
Karen Kiefer, Director of Parks and Recreation. She's maybe not on yet. Adam Weiser, Director of Public Works.
Present.
Kevin McNeely, Fire Chief.
Present.
And I already mentioned Jen, the two Jens.
Karen's on. She's having trouble with something to do with communication. So.
Okay, she can maybe figure that out before it's her turn. So are there any amendments, additions, or deletions to or from the agenda tonight? Does anybody have a disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof? Seeing none, we'll move to the adoption of the minutes from the regular and special meetings of council.
Moved by Dave Kyler, seconded by Maureen Couture, that the minutes of the council meetings held on November the 16th, 2020 and November 19th, 2020 be adopted as printed.
Any further discussion from the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? And the motion carried. Are there any notices of motion tonight?
Your worship, Jerry.
Yes, Jerry?
I'd like to request a notice of motion come forward regarding a staff report on the options for the deputy mayor for the next election.
Okay. And when are you bringing the motion forward? Is this a notice?
Sorry, yes, I'll be guided by Jennifer Lowry here a bit. It looks like it might be able to come forward on December 14th. And specifically what I'm trying to tease out is how can we separate out the deputy mayor for a specifically elected role, and what would be the recommendation moving forward as opposed to the deputy mayor being chosen for at large.
Okay, thank you. Any other notices of motion? 5.2, the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, website support, and new business.
So this is moved by Jerry Glover, seconded by Bill Stewart. Whereas on October 26, 2020, the City of Belleville passed a resolution requesting that the Province of Ontario consider providing funding support and training resources to municipalities to meet the compliance standards under Section 14.4 of OREG 191.11 under the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, which requires designated public sector organizations to conform to WCAG 2.0 level AA by January 1st, 2021. And whereas the Accessibility Advisory Committee at their meeting of November 10th, 2020 recommended that Council support the above noted resolution from the City of Belleville, and whereas the Municipality of Kincardine is committed to the provision of accessible goods and services and provides accommodations to meet any stated accessibility need where possible. Now therefore be it resolved that the Municipality of Kincardine support the City of Belleville's resolution passed on October 26, 2020 regarding providing funding support and training resources to municipality to meet compliance standards under Section 14.4 of OREG 191.11 under the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, and further that this resolution be forwarded to the Premier of Ontario, Huron's MPP Lisa Thompson, and the Association of Municipalities of Ontario.
Thank you. Do any council members want to speak to this? I know, Maureen, you're on the advisory committee in this regard.
Yeah,
Did you have
it's
any
pretty
comments?
straightforward. The whereases explain it quite well. We're just looking for funding to bring us up to standards standards which are continually being imposed at the beginning of each year, it seems. So,
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? All right, all in favor of the motion?
Yes.
yes,
Yes.
Yes.
Anyone opposed? And that carried. Next, we move into committee of the whole.
Moved by Randy Ropel, seconded by Laura Haight, that council move into committee of the whole and upon completion return to council.
All in favor?
Yes.
Any opposed? And we are in committee of the whole, so I'm going to call this committee of the whole meeting of the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Kincardine to order. And it is 5:06 on December 7th, 2020. We're meeting electronically. Are there any amendments, additions, or deletions to or from this agenda? We've had a request to add a delegation from the Kincardine Physicians Group regarding the CT scanner project at the Kincardine site. It was a late request, so it would go on as 7.1B, but it's up to council if you want to grant the request. Yes, Councillor Haight.
Madam Mayor, with respect to the delegation request, I mean, normally I'd be happy to accept it. It's just given the length of this agenda, I'm wondering if we can just dispatch to the resolution. I'm happy to support the resolution that's included in the report. I've read the report. I'm not sure we actually need the delegation to come and add that extra time. So I would prefer just moving the resolution on to a matters rising this evening.
I can second that.
Councillor Couture.
yeah, I was going to second it. I agree with that. Sorry, got the phone going just a sec.
So
Your pizza's ready.
okay, so you moved and second. All in favor?
Yes.
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 Can anybody have a comment, or is it? Open
Oh,
and
okay, yes, a comment. All right,
Go
sorry,
ahead.
I should have asked for more comments soon, before. Councillor Kennedy.
Yeah, just like I'm fine with this. You know, it's pretty disappointing that the board has changed this on us, and you know, it's just really disappointing, and the public should know about it. And that's all from me. Okay.
Okay, any other comments? Yes, Councillor Glover.
Nothing contentious, just wanted, so clarifying in terms of the resolution, does that mean that a letter of support from council from the municipality would be drafted before the end of this week, going over to the physicians group and the foundation to support the preferred option? Or I guess maybe I'm just wanting confirmation on next steps, just that way I understand them for myself.
At the end of the report in the delegation, there was actually a recommendation for an action to be taken, Jerry. And so I think my thought is we bring that forward. If council is approving of that, then it certainly would get within the time frame. It just dispatches with the need for the delegation this evening, given that we've already read the materials.
So I'm going to ask, because it wasn't on the, you know, if people looked at the agendas, you know, over the weekend, it wasn't on. So I'm going to ask our clerk to read the resolution so that everybody, just to make sure we all know and members of the public.
Can't hear anything.
She's still looking.
I'm just pulling it up. Just give me 1 second here.
Again.
So the request is Kincardine Physicians requests council to encourage the SBGHC board to respect the understanding of the council and physicians in the discussions that have surrounded the Kincardine site CT to date and proceed with the purchase of the Drive CT scanner. In absence of the decision to proceed with the Drive CT, we request council to host a public meeting to review a board decision to buy the Edge Plus.
So are there any further comments? All right. So I think maybe I will ask all in favor, or should I go around the table for clarity? I think all in favor is good enough, and then I'll say those opposed, okay? So
I'm sorry, are we voting on
the resolution.
the actual resolutions? We're not dealing with it as matters arising. We're dealing with the resolution now.
Oh,
It's just a
okay.
question.
Sorry, this is just added to the agenda. Now, you had told me at 7.1B, do you want it added there for more discussion, or matters arises? Okay,
Okay.
in council on matters arising. Okay. I was going to add it to this agenda. Okay, thanks. All right. So,
Perhaps someone could ask Dr. Gerben that or advise him what we've done.
yes. All in favor of adding it, the resolution to back to the council agenda as matters
Yes.
arising?
Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Okay, that carried. It'll be added to the council agenda, not the committee of the whole. Does anybody have a disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof on this committee of the whole agenda? Seeing none, we'll go to the adoption of the minutes of the committee of the whole meetings. And
So moved by Maureen Couture, seconded by Jerry Glover, that the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting held on November 16th, 2020 be adopted as printed.
any further discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
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 Any opposed? And that carried. Now we move to delegations. And our first delegation, 6.1, we welcome Jennifer Hunter and Meg Durkin. And their topic is a response to racist vandalism in our community. I just want to make one comment before they start. I always assume that people know they can make delegations to council. You maybe don't get it the next day, but anybody is free at any time to contact our clerk, Jennifer Laurie, and request a delegation to council on a topic. Okay, so welcome Jennifer and Meg, and we look forward to your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Edie, and thank you, councilors. I'm just going to ask briefly that you all make an effort to clear your minds and to open your minds without judgment. I'm not asking for absolution of judgment of myself, but of yourself and of others. It's very important that we begin in that space. And I also wanted to make it known that what I have to say this evening is acknowledging that I truly believe that when it comes to racism in our community, that you have good intentions, the best of intentions, and that my purpose here is to acknowledge that we can do better and that we must do better. So in and around November 29th, our town was vandalized with a racist message that contained the words, "It's okay to be white." This message is used by white supremacist organizations, white nationalist organizations, United Klans of America organizations, neo-Nazis. It is a slogan that they have adopted and taken in as their own. Those signs have been posted internationally, not just here in our own community. This kind of racism is much more insidious. It is camouflaged in the policies and the social norms that we are involved in, that we operate in on a daily basis. It is designed to comfort people who know that burning a cross in their front yard is wrong or could be shameful. This kind of racism is designed to operate within systemic racism. Its point is so that you don't see it. And if you do see it, you don't call it out. But it carries the same message of hate regardless. So this is the kind of racism that I believe is prevalent in our community. It's in the phrases when we cry out Black Lives Matter, and the response is all lives matter. It's when we say Black Lives Matter and someone says, well, I don't see color. Or, but what about Black on Black crime? Or, I support the protests, but I don't stand for rioting or looting. It's in a random, out of context Dr. King quote. These are all designed so that people who are on the fence, or maybe not on the fence, begin to feel comfortable in their racist inactions and their racist actions. We see racism in our community when we cry out for equity, and the response is, I believe in treating everyone equally. So Ibram X. Kendi defines racist as one who is supporting racist policy through their action or inaction, or expressing a racist idea. So the flip side of that is anti-racist, which means, in its literal term, against racism. So that is one who is supporting anti-racist policy through their action or inaction, or expressing an anti-racist idea. And it's the inaction in support of racism that I see most prevalent in our community. When the racist signs were posted, I believe one of the quickest response was that those signs were taken down. But there was a period of silence from our elected leaders in the community that, in my opinion, resonated louder than the message on those signs. We have heard messages, and just, again, just by the definition of being racist, inaction is equally as strong a contributor to racist ideas and racist policies as racist actions. And silence can be defined as either one. So we've heard messages in the past since since COVID-19 first came up. We heard messages from our representatives and community members alike about their disagreement with our beaches being closed, or the golf courses being closed, or there were incidents when people were stealing flowers from the different parks that had been donated. And we heard messages of disagreement and messages saying, I don't agree with that, this is wrong, this needs to stop. But while we were all home and in our communities, and our brothers and sisters were being harmed, and Breonna Taylor was shot in her home by 3 police officers, only later to discover that they had the wrong house. While George Floyd called out for his mother one last time before he was able to take his last breath. While Regis Korchinski-Paquette fell to her death, while police officers in Toronto responded to a wellness check. We heard cries from our community during all of this to continue to shop locally, which we do and I continue to do. But why is it that we can advocate for our economy in those kinds of ways and yet remain silent when we are called, when we have injustices staring us in the face, to rise up and stand against it? And that is what we need in our community from our elected leaders. Mayor Edie wrote a message this past Saturday, a statement on behalf of the municipality, condemning all forms of racism. And that is important. That's an important message. And I think it's equally as important to be able to identify racism when we see it, to call it out directly. Because if we are unable to do that, that in and of itself contributes to racist ideas. Because racism, the discussion that we're having here, this presentation, is uncomfortable. It is forcing us all to take a look at ourselves, our own social and economic, our own bias, our own racist ideas that we may have unwillingly bought into that are built into the system around us. We have to look at ourselves with honest eyes in order to break the pattern. And so when we describe racism, or when racism in that municipal, in the statement that was made, is described as racist in nature or implied racism, it falls short to calling it out. The sign was racist, the message was racist, and it resonated in this community strongly. And it's important that we identify the problem so that we can fix it. And you have to keep in mind that the system is designed so that you don't see it. It's designed so that your privilege goes unnoticed by yourself. But that those of us who do receive injustices because of the color of our skin, we are taught to see it and to know it. So I am here, and my friend Meg is here to help move us on that path to being anti-racist with swiftness, so that we as a community can look to our officials who have done the homework, who have done the work within themselves, so that as part of their position to enact policy, so that they are able to see the problems within the policy, so that those problems are not repeated in our future. And it starts with education. It starts with act, and it continues with action. I also wanted to point out quickly that there are businesses in this town, NPX in particular, who launched a program, and they've had such a tremendous influence on our community, where they were literally giving away Black Lives Matter signs in our community. They were accepting donations, but they were giving these signs away. Gray Matter Beer, who Meg is the owner of Gray Matter Beer Company, also often, she took on, she also offered to distribute those signs as well. And she does a tremendous amount of work in our community for everyone. And how powerful of a statement would it have been if our municipality and our municipal spaces and offices had taken up the option to display those signs? And then our business leaders could see the difference that it makes. And our community and our residents and our schools could follow suit. So that is why I'm here, not to diminish the actions or the steps that have been taken, but to emphasize the fact that as our elected leaders in our community, I believe it is your responsibility to raise that bar for equity, for education, for diversity and inclusion, and to have an understanding that it is not a stagnant place, anti-racism. It is a constant and continuous effort of work that we as a community are hungry for and desperately need. Thank you.
Hi, I can just say a few words. I know we're running short on time, and you have quite a few delegations.
That's okay, Meg. It's important, and I haven't been timing you, so I think you have a few minutes.
Okay, I'll keep it short. I had some prepared statements, but I wanted to first start by saying that this afternoon when I was out walking my dog on Queen Street, I noticed that NPX, the business that Jenny mentioned, had their front windows vandalized today. If you're not familiar with NPX and their front windows, they have a pretty large display that says Black Lives Matter, say their names. And it looked as though their business had been egged or had something thrown at their windows today. I did not see any other businesses that had been vandalized in a similar fashion around them. Of course, I don't have any information on it other than what I saw, so I'm not going to draw any conclusions. But I bring this up to say that the incident of the signs being posted last weekend is not an isolated incident. It is something that exists in our community, and it's something that needs to be addressed. The culture that exists in our community needs to be addressed. And I'm here today as a white person, as an ally, as Jenny's friend. I'm delighted that she invited me to join her. And also as a business owner. I have found, and my partner have found, that this community and the municipality specifically have been incredibly supportive of us in our endeavor here. We feel very supported by the municipal staff, as well as by the community, and the Economic Development Board, the BIA, tourism. All of those organizations have really helped to allow us to thrive here. And we feel like we've been set up for success. And I just want to point to this year specifically. We have seen, like Jenny mentioned, how much difference, the significant impact that our community and our municipality can have on things like shopping local. And I'm here because I think it's important that our municipality looks at those endeavors as an example for how to proceed when it comes to anti-racism in our community. I think that we can have such a significant impact, but it is incumbent upon leaders in our community. So religious leaders, educational leaders, business leaders, and governmental leaders to really speak out when instances of racism occur in our community. Because it is not just a matter of making business owners feel secure and safe in our community, it is also ensuring that everyone who lives here feels safe and secure in our community. And I can tell you that I felt all kinds of feelings on Sunday when Jenny sent me pictures of those signs being posted, because it just broke my heart to know that people who I consider friends, customers, acquaintances in our community were hurting as a result of those signs. So it really is incumbent upon leaders to state unequivocally that those beliefs will not be tolerated in our community, and that we are going to work to educate ourselves to help be better leaders and to do better in our community. I wanted to just point to the delegation form that was submitted that you have access to, which clearly states out what we're asking for. We're asking that council and municipal staff have ongoing diversity and inclusion training, because I think that that is the first step to ensuring that we can start acting in an anti-racist fashion in our community and help to prevent actions like what we've seen happen in our community recently continue to happen. And we're asking that the municipality and council speak out against acts of racism and bigotry in our community when they happen unequivocally, without exception. So if you have any questions, Jenny and I are happy to answer them, but that will be the end of my presentation.
Okay, thank you. So does anybody have any questions? Am I on mute here? No. Does anybody have questions for Jenny and Meg at this time, or any comments? Yes, Councillor Kennedy.
Yeah, just I've been to a couple of the workshops that Meg has run to help educate people and work with the business community. And like the two of them say, you know, I've got a lot of those words written down already before they spoke them, but words can just go so far right now. Actions is the most important thing. You know, education, the multicultural town that we have. I just really think, and you know, I've said it at these workshops that people are uncomfortable talking about this in a live form, and that's me a little bit included. So I just really think going forward that we need a little more interaction amongst council about this topic to really help this initiative move forward to a better place generations down the road. So it's really important. Thanks.
Anyone else? Thanks, Doug. Yes, Laura?
Just for the benefit of council, as chair of the Police Services Board, I became aware of the signs on Sunday morning. I believe Councillor Glover, later on that morning, had sent out an email to all of council. I'd seen a Facebook post by Joy Shields with these signs on her Facebook page, messaged Joy directly, and she had said she was uncomfortable removing the sign. I went down and removed the sign. I want to say too that, and this is our first council meeting since the incident. Several actions have taken place. I think Jenny had mentioned that Mayor Eadie had done her press release on Friday with respect that we don't tolerate racism. I don't want to leave the impression that nothing had been done. There had been a discussion between myself and Inspector Miller on that Sunday afternoon. So I didn't want the rest of council to think that zero action had been taken between Sunday morning and this evening's meeting. That's just filling in on some of those bits. Councillor Kennedy had emailed later on in the week, and I'd responded to his email as well. So
I did not know until Sunday night when I received an email from a resident. It wasn't either Jenny or Meg, but another resident. So I did ask our Public Works to remove the signs Monday morning. So I did contact our Public Works director Sunday night. You're absolutely right. Your presentation, I have told the public before, and it has been mentioned at the council table. But my standard line is, we are a multicultural community. We welcome everyone, regardless of race, religion, culture, abilities, or sexual orientation. And I will keep giving that message. Now, going forward as a council, and I include myself, we can do better. It's paramount that each one of us on council, as community leaders, speak up. I had some saying, get those signs down. We don't want that sort of thing to happen in Kincardine, but it already happened, right? So we need to speak up when we are witnesses, as Jenny and Meg have said. We need to speak up when we hear racial jokes, comments, and we need to take action. I'm very disappointed. I hope at the NPX office, that's not why they were vandalized, because they are a company started here in Kincardine, associated with the nuclear industry. They're brilliant people from all over, and they have chosen Kincardine as a place to start their company. They started, it won't be any more than 3 years ago, with 4 employees. And now the last time I was talking to them, they had nearly 70. And they're very proactive in the community. And I'm just very disappointed in that. I'm also disappointed when I became mayor, I asked that we consider having an Indigenous acknowledgement at the start of meetings. This term, it was this term when I was elected this term. So that's nearly 2 years ago. And again, we can do better. We need to get it back to the council table. So these are some of the things. And I would be happy to have a session, can be a special education session in the new year on anti-racism. I commend Jen and Jackie Arnold for starting that first session on anti-racism. I was able to attend it. And I have this year, we had a lot of visitors to the municipality of Kincardine, and I received criticism in email or in person for allowing people of different races from the city to come to our municipality. So I think we have a lot of work to do, and we need to work together as a community to do it, because we've been multicultural for quite a while. I'm just going to finish by saying this. When I came back from university to teach here in Kincardine, Bruce Power was just starting. So when I left for university, of course, I didn't get off the farm much before I left. Our community was white, a lot of red-haired people, but we were mainly white, Irish, Scottish English, few Germans, and a few people from other races, but very few. When I came back after university to teach in the 70s, my first class was amazing. I had people from all over the world. I had students from all over the world. I met people from all over the world. So that's a long time ago. And we need to do better yet. We improved somewhat over the decades. My children went to school with people of all races when they were young, and my sons always tell me it's our generation that is more of a problem, but it's not necessarily so, I don't think. And my daughter-in-law is from Jamaica, and she moved to Canada 5 or 6 years ago and married my son. And she was surprised at the amount of what she calls subtle racism in Canada, because Canada was sort of the land of opportunity, equality. Everybody is accepted, and it's known around the world that we in theory welcome people from all sorts of backgrounds to Canada, but we still have to make the effort. We have to learn more and support each other. So I'm going to ask for a staff report as to how we can improve at our council table and in our municipality, but we'll start with our council first. What education we need, what actions we can take to show that we truly welcome people of all backgrounds to the municipality of Kincardine. So thank you again for your presentation, and we'll be in touch. And I want to reiterate that anytime you have something that you want to present to council, you are both excellent speakers. And I told Jenny once she should consider running for council when her children get older. So make sure you do come back if you think it's necessary and give us some guidance. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Anne. Thanks for having us.
Okay. So our next delegation is the Municipal Innovation Council Progress Report, and we welcome Dave Shorey and Jessica Linthorne.
Hello, I think I was just transferred here, so here I am now. Good evening, everyone. I just want to thank Mayor, Council for providing us with the opportunity to be able to share on the progress that the Municipal Innovation Council has made over the last year. My name is Dave Shorey, Innovation Officer for the Municipal Innovation Council. I've been in the role since August, so just about 4 months. And in that time, I've been able to really connect with a lot of people from across Bruce County with the member municipalities. I have the great and opportunity actually to present by way of delegation to each of the member councils over the next 8 days, county council in January. But it makes for a busy schedule, but I think it's a positive opportunity for us to be able to share our story a little bit. I'll note Jess Linthorne, who's just joined by video, I should say, chair of the Municipal Innovation Council. She's here in case there's any questions that are more suitable for the chair, but I'll be doing the bulk of the talking and being able to share what it is that we've been able to do. So we have a slide deck. I know that it was included in your package. It's been circulated. I will note that I know that it's a very dense presentation, and I promise you we will not be going through it word by word, just given the pressures of time, but also the density of the document. But I did want to make sure that you had that kind of information available to you as reference material, so that you're able to take a look at that when it is that you're more curious or when time allows. And I should say that, I was with the Northern Bruce Peninsula Council earlier today, and there was a question that turned into an action item, which is great. Someone that was curious about attainable housing, and I'll be able to briefly talk about that. So I welcome those as opportunities to continue to work with members of the Municipal Innovation Council. Next slide, please. The slide that you're seeing now is really just a setup of this whole PowerPoint deck. So that's just to give you a bit of a roadmap as to what's in front of you. Next slide, please. But the vision statement is really a mission and vision statement. And I recognize for anyone who's done organizational development work, those two aren't the same, but they aren't mutually exclusive either. Really what we want to highlight is that we're really focused on building smarter, stronger, and more resilient communities that can adapt with change, that can be responsive, that can lead change, and that there are ways in which we can be very thoughtful about that in our work. Next slide, please. I used to work at Wilfrid Laurier University. I worked in the Division of Student Affairs. I grew up in Southampton. I left, went to school, did my undergrad and my graduate work in Waterloo, and in the process was able to develop a good relationship with Brian Rossborough, who's now the executive director for AMO, but at that time was working at Laurier as well. And so when we reconnected after I moved into this role, I talked about, what does innovation mean to you? And Brian said, all innovation is local because it's people that are close to the issues. And really, when we're talking about innovation, we're talking about problem solving. So part of the work that I've really engaged in is extensive discovery work, meeting with municipal staff and those that are outside of our network, those that are leading conversations in many areas of opportunity as it relates to municipal improvement. And it's been a really rich learning opportunity for me, and I believe that we've been able to provide benefit to member communities, at least in the early going. Next slide, please. And then the next one. The one thing that I really learned in the discovery work is that the word innovation can be very coded for people. Innovation can mean very different things. For someone, it may be something of an image like Back to the Future, or of the second one, not the first one, or the Jetsons or something like that. And then others, it's maybe more about incremental improvement. And so I really wanted to define, what does innovation mean for the Municipal Innovation Council? And that probably 75% of our efforts are really going to be focused on incremental improvement. So taking a look at existing services and systems and figuring out ways to find greater efficiencies. Then you look at sustained innovation, and that being that we're investing in next generation solutions to what we already offer. And then probably the least prevalent, but sometimes the most arduous, are those transformational innovations. And those are things that disrupt current service agreements or levels of service and operations, maybe new models or systems that we use in order to do our work. I will say that again, most of the work is going to be that certainly has risen as part of the discovery work, has really been focused on incremental improvements, and you'll be able to see that in a little bit. Next slide, please. So in order to really articulate a strategic framework, we needed to ask these two questions: where do we play, and how do we win? And that was one of the primary objectives moving into this role, is defining a strategic framework that helps us focus on particular areas that we believe we can make an impact, and then thinking about the kind of skills and knowledge and capabilities that we would need in order to make or affect change as it relates to those areas of opportunity. So that really is an illustration of those two core questions. Next slide, please. So when we ask the question, where do we play? We start to move towards what are our opportunity areas? Where are the areas that we think that we can affect that kind of change? That they're significant and enduring problem areas for our communities, and that if we can solve them, they unlock considerable new value. Next slide, please. And so these are the 6 opportunity areas that we've been able to articulate as part of the discovery work. And I say we because there's been a lot of input from staff from across member municipalities, but trying to wordsmith it in a way where people can see themselves in it has been certainly a priority. So first, focusing on holistic housing, looking at ways in which we can reduce or remove barriers for those that are looking for housing, and this is an issue in multiple communities, although the issue is unique to each of those communities. But that's one area of opportunity that we feel we can positively impact. Transportation. We really don't have a transportation infrastructure or a network that we may see in other neighboring counties that are rural or peri-rural, something to that effect. And so taking a look at what are the transportation needs and being able to determine what are the intra, inter, and outer county transportation options or opportunities we can look at. Next is world-class waste. We've been working with Dillon Consulting on a solid waste management review, service review. They've been able to help us see what it is that we are providing our communities at this point, and is providing some advice on next steps. Where should we focus our efforts, whether it's additional strategy, share procurement, or being able to take a look at ways that we can increase efficiencies with our landfill sites. So that's an example of where we've been focusing on world-class waste. As it relates to resilient infrastructure, we are tasked with repairing, building new infrastructure or existing infrastructure, and how do we account for factors like climate change in order for our infrastructure to be resilient to shocks. As it relates to sustainable development, we have an influx of capital, especially in communities like Kincardine, tourism, agriculture, and energy, alongside what is becoming an exodus of urban centers into rural Ontario as a result of the pandemic. And so how can we focus on community readiness in those moments? And what does sustainable development mean, where we can leverage what's happening in our communities, but at the same time be well positioned to thrive in that environment? And last, agile service delivery. And this is really a focus on the existing services or new services and the ways in which they meet the needs of today's community and of tomorrow's community members, and the way that we can reduce or remove barriers to access as part of that. These are big areas of opportunity, and we recognize that. A mandate that's bold is a good one. It creates stretch goals. This is a good thing. We also, what I have found is that we have staff from across all municipalities that are members that are keenly interested in engaging in conversations about these issues. But in order to really affect change in our opportunity areas, we really do need to think about the kind of skills and knowledge, competencies that we will need to either build or enhance in order to make some progress in these areas. So if you go to the next slide, please. That's the second question. How do we win? It's thinking about what skills and knowledge and capabilities, strategic capabilities we need in order to make progress in those areas. And so the next slide outlines the 7 strategic capabilities that are to be focused on. And I've actually found that I've been spending a lot of my time over the last 3.5 months in this role installing or thinking about reaching out and figuring out ways to be able to install these strategic capabilities or be able to enhance what already exists. Looking at digital transformation, knowing that the municipality of Kincardine is actually quite intent on looking at this issue closely and is in the process of doing so. Looking at procurement practices and taking a look at ways in which member municipalities could partner together and find efficiencies with purchasing. We're data rich. We have a lot of data available to us. There's also a lot of research that can inform decision making that's beyond our respective communities. How do we integrate that in a way that can help us tell our own story and make meaning of the data? Next, we focus on community-centered engagement. And the previous delegation, I think, highlighted the opportunity to continue to engage and be very community-focused and community-centered in how we engage our people. And then how we can build capacity in our community so that community members can take leadership roles, can really drive the conversation and be able to make progress. Looking at inclusive organizational development within our municipal offices, making sure that our staff look like our community and represent our community. And then also thinking about things like succession planning and the ways in which we can make sure that we have young, talented staff that are eager to be able to grow in their roles and be able to continue to provide leadership to the community. Next, learning and action in our communities of practice. There are a number of networks across this province and country focused on rural development and municipal affairs. And I've been trying to really form a lot of connections that are both urban and rural because there's a lot of lessons to be learned. And lastly, how do we leverage partnerships for scaled impact? And in particular, I think about our elected officials at the provincial and the federal level and some of the meetings we've been able to have and the conversations we're going to be able to have in the future to highlight the kind of needs and also the innovations that are present in our member communities. Next slide, please. I'm not going to go over this, I promise. This is just reference material, again, to give you more of an operational definition for each of these 7 strategic capabilities, just so that it's in front of you and you have access to that. Next slide, please. So this is essentially a work plan, and this is the way in which I've tried to demonstrate the relationship between the strategic capabilities that we're working on building, that we're focused on investing in, and how that intersects with those 6 areas of opportunity we've identified. So there's a number of projects that are actually underway. The strategic framework was, I think, it's a useful and important key performance indicator for the Municipal Innovation Council. And also when you take a look at the volume of projects that are, and a lot of them are at their embryonic stage, at their infancy stage, but there's some that are a little bit further along, that this starts to demonstrate that there are a number of projects that are underway. Next slide, please. So the last 3 slides really start to highlight some of the things that are happening. Innovation in progress in Bruce County with member municipalities. Taking a look at the solid waste management service review, I've already referenced that with Dillon Consulting, and they are near complete on a report. We're just consolidating the last round of feedback. Taking a look at ways in which municipalities that are members of the Municipal Innovation Council can perhaps move in on something together to help with asset mapping, natural and man-made asset mapping to inform risk assessments for things like flooding, especially useful around the coastal areas. Because of my relationship with post-secondary institutions, we've been able to leverage that to create new opportunities for youth to engage post-secondary institutions. Most recently, was able to work with Sacred Heart High School in Walkerton to be able to connect 29 grade 12 students to Laurier Center for Experiential Learning to help students start to explore a little bit more around career progress. The last 2 slides, again, I'll just say are reference material. So if you go to the next one, you'll see we're talking about a digital signature solution. You are already customers of Consigno. We're taking a look at implementing that in neighboring municipalities. But that, when it comes to housing, Saugeen Shores has led an attainable housing task force, and they're at the point where the task force report has key recommendations. My relationship with the planning school at the University of Waterloo has allowed for 2 faculty members to sign on to partner with the town of Saugeen Shores for this winter term to engage undergraduate and graduate students in research around attainable housing. I highlight this because the conversation that I had with the faculty members and with the planning school was, I would love this to be a first step. And they're keenly interested in engaging in the same conversation across all municipalities and really taking a look at this as a Bruce County issue. They see it as a unique opportunity because they don't have many rural communities that they're partnering with to take a look at the unique needs of a rural community growing because of a number of reasons why it is growing. So attainable housing is something that we're going to be able to expand to other municipalities. And the last slide is projects. They are projects, innovation candidates that are a little bit earlier on, talking to Grey County and trying to learn about what they are experiencing with their pilot around transit. I myself am keen to support municipal staff, council, community members that may feel jammed up and locked up on an issue. And if there are ways that I can help facilitate those conversations, happy to do so and provide as a service on behalf of the Municipal Innovation Council. And then, some other pieces there. Recognizing that I've pushed up on time, I'll say thank you for again providing me with this opportunity, with us with this opportunity, and I welcome any comments or questions that may come.
Thank you, Dave and Jessica. Very good presentation. Does anybody have any comments or questions they want to make? I know we are kind of pressed for time tonight, but there were certain things I'm sure resonated with all of us, and we can maybe have a fuller discussion another time. But the initiative with attainable housing, affordable housing, holistic housing, whatever the new modern name is really in the forefront in Bruce County, and it has been for a long time. So I personally am really interested in that, and maybe we can have you come back and be on the agenda another time, please.
Sounds great.
Okay. So thank you very much.
Mary Edie, if I could just make a comment before they go.
Yes.
I wanted to thank both Dave and Jessica for coming tonight, and just let council know that I do feel the Municipal Innovation Council is a great success in our first year. I know you haven't seen any projects come across your plate yet, but as Dave indicated, the waste management review will be coming to the table soon. And I find that we have met as CAO group many times in the past, trying to advance joint projects together. And it's been very difficult to do so because, we don't have that additional resource, such as Dave as the lab director. And I'm already seeing quite a difference in being able to have someone dedicated to advance some of those projects. And I'm looking forward to bringing them to council's attention in the future.
Yes, Dave. I can't hear you, Dave.
There we go. I was just wondering if Dave had been involved in any talks with. You're involved with Grey County right now. Have you had any talks with Bruce County? I'm on the board of directors at SMART, and we are trying to make our service better. That's the short term of it, anyway. And it's quite a job. We're trying to talk to Grey County and Bruce County and make things better. I just wondered if you had been involved in any of that. Or
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I met with Roger early on when I was first beginning. Roger from Soggy Mobility.
Yeah.
And we had a conversation because he had identified 3 municipalities that were of interest in terms of being able to grow in. Was able to connect him with Northern Bruce Peninsula pretty quickly when they expressed interest in at least talking about that. So that's a longer answer to say yes. Been engaged with SMART, and I think what you're highlighting is that's part of a broader strategy around transportation. Less of a conversation with Grey County, in large part because I was really focused on the member municipalities and SMART and figuring out ways that we could make some sense as to the reach of SMART for those 3 municipalities that aren't members.
Yes, well, thank you. Keep working on it. Roger, I'll talk to you anytime, I'm sure.
Right on. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. One area I am interested in also is procurement. We work with LAS through AMO, but I would like to hear more about that in the future. So you're welcome to come anytime again. Thank you very much.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Next, for 6.3, our delegation is the Grey Bruce Ontario Health Team, Planning Committee, Progress Report, and we welcome Michael Barrett, who is the CEO of the South Bruce Grey Health Centre, of which our Kincardine site is one of the sites, and also Phil Dodd from Keystone. So welcome. I see Michael. Are you just coming in now? Let me see.
Thanks, Mary Edie. Phil is going to be kicking things off for us.
Okay, thank you. So while we're waiting, This is a very comprehensive topic, and I know it's a short presentation, but I think it's good just to have an overview. And if we need more information, I know at the county we ran out of time and asked for you to come back, and the presenters to come back at another time and be an agenda item as well.
Hello, are we on, Mike? I'm sorry.
Yes, you are, Phil. Welcome, Phil.
My apologies, Your Worship. I think I disconnected myself, or I went somewhere. I don't know.
I've done that too. So welcome to the club. Just go ahead with your presentation if you
Okay.
can.
So what I'm going to do is quickly consolidate the first 8 slides of the presentation. I'm assuming you all have a copy of the presentation.
Yes.
So I trust in your ability to read the words and understand them. So I'll quickly just kind of give an overview of the first 8 slides or so, and then Mike will take over. But what is an Ontario Health Team? These are healthcare providers funded by the Ministry of Health in geographical regions across the province that will be asked to put forward an application. And we have grouped together in Grey and Bruce our geography to be an Ontario Health Team. So it includes long-term care homes, primary care hospitals, individual doctors, home and community care organizations. So across Grey and Bruce, we are involved in this process. You can move on to the next slide. And I think we've been in this process for over a year now, developing ourselves. Since July, we were asked to submit for our readiness assessment. We have that completed, and we're into the full application, which is due on December the 11th. Next slide. And we're looking at 2 priority areas in the first year of operation, which is still a work in progress. It's not a finished operation, but we're looking at improving care for transitions for frail seniors and in supporting people living with mental health and addiction issues in the first year of what the ministry is wanting us to plan for. Next slide. So again, I'll let you read this. These are our key stakeholders we currently are involved with, and we see future stakeholders as we move forward and become an Ontario Health Team in Grey and Bruce, and looking at further engagement and lots of other pieces of developing who we are as an organization and a group in Grey Bruce. Next slide. So again, I will let you read this on your own. You can see we've tried to engage with various stakeholders and groups within Grey and Bruce. Next slide. One of the key things we were able to do, and a great achievement, I think, for our sector, is we put out a survey. It was out there for a couple of weeks, and we had over 1,100 respondents to that survey, and we got some really good feedback for all of the individual service providers and for the Ontario Health Team as a whole. And primary care and challenges in navigating the healthcare system were some of the common themes. And we see ourselves continuing to reach out to lots of our stakeholders moving forward. And we continue to see ourselves mining into the results of that survey and over the next couple of years and getting more, mining into them further and getting more detail, and hopefully being able to address some of those issues identified in that survey. Next slide. And just identifying that the planning committee has been working on the oversight and providing the direction on the creation of the Ontario Health Team Grey Bruce model. And we're working under the auspices of the Grey Bruce Integrated Health Coalition, who's been around for several years, and these are all Ministry of Health funded organizations. And we see as time goes on, and Mike will speak to this, that the evolution of our governance, the evolution of our membership will continue over the next several years as we move closer and closer to maturity. And I think Mike's going to take over at this point.
Great. Thanks very much, Phil. And thank you, Mayor Eady and Municipal Council for allowing us some time this evening on your agenda. It's not a coincidence that Phil and I are here together presenting, because the OHTs are really about partnerships between different organizations. So Phil is with Keystone, I'm with the hospital and with South Bruce Gray. And we're here to present a collaborative, cohesive view across partners working in healthcare across Gray and Bruce counties. So there's been lots of questions about how, once the Ontario Health Team is established, how is it going to be governed? And people right off the bat want to know what the governance structure is. Right now, it's a bunch of administrators, people like myself, people like Phil, from family health teams, from community mental health and addictions, long-term care homes, pulling together the full application that Phil noted. But as we go forward, there's a requirement for a decision-making structure to be put into place. So that'll involve patients, caregivers, community leaders. So you'll see an evolution. If you can go to the next slide. The decision-making for the Ontario Health Team, this is a pretty simple diagram, but hopefully it paints a picture of what it will look like. On the left is the introduction, where we are now. We're just starting this process. And at the right is maturity for the Ontario Health Team. So at the start, it's going to be a bunch of administrators, as I said, like Phil and I. But as time goes on, those administrators will take their role in the decision-making will be less and less. And community leaders, boards, will take a much larger role. So as we go forward, you'll see greater and greater involvement from patients, from community leaders, and this greater emphasis on community leaders moving into the future. Next slide, please. So what do we want to improve? So there's a number of things when you look at what do we need to improve within the system. One is to reduce the required time to receive a home care visit. We also want to reduce the number of patients with mental health and addiction showing up at our emergency departments. And that's not because we don't want them in our emergency department. It's because we want to ensure they've got the proper community support. So it's a good measure to see if they're getting those community supports. We want to reduce readmissions to hospitals. So once we discharge someone, we want them to be in the best shape possible to get to their next destination, and then get the right care once they get to that next destination. Whether it's a long-term care home, whether it's home, supportive housing, and reducing that chance of them coming back to hospital unnecessarily. Another measure is to improve access to primary care. So the measure of a high-performing healthcare system is if you can see your primary care provider same day or next day. So we need to measure that, and that was some of the feedback we got from the survey that Phil referenced. That's a concern for people here in Grey Bruce. So I won't go through all of them, but you can see the others there, but they're system measures, and it's about how how patients move through the healthcare system, moving between different sectors. Next slide, please. So there's a number of questions that we've asked boards. I won't go through these, but what does a successful Ontario Health Team look like to you? So happy to answer any of these questions or hear your responses, I should say, to Municipal Council if we've got them tonight. Next slide, please. So just to summarize, Phil and I did a quick job here in terms of providing that overview. I think a really important message is that Ontario Health Teams are different than previous structures that were in the healthcare system. So previously we had a LHIN, which was a regional body based out of London, providing direction and advice for the folks here in Grey Bruce. This is different. Now this is Grey Bruce making its own decisions about its own territory. So this is really an opportunity for Grey Bruce to shine, to address some of those challenges that have been faced in the past that haven't been addressed. So it's an opportunity for those folks in Grey Bruce to take ownership of their healthcare system and make sure that we're putting a structure in place that's going to best meet the needs of the people we serve. Last thing, we're asking all partner organizations to sign off on the application. So that process is underway right now. And the application is being circulated to a number of providers for that submission date that Phil referred to of December the 11th. Next slide, please. So Phil and I are happy to answer any questions or respond to any comments that you may have about the Ontario Health Team.
Okay, thank you, Phil and Mike. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Ropel. Sorry, I've got to get out of that habit. Deputy Mayor Ropel.
That's okay, and I've been called a lot of names in my time. Yes, thanks, Mr. Barrett, for coming and giving us an update with respect to the Ontario Health Team. I think one of the issues, and it's been a long-standing issue with respect to the hospital in Kincardine, is maybe you could tell, to start off with, maybe you should suggest to the province that they get off their butts and actually do something to re get a new facility up there. We call what's there a hospital, and yes, it is. And I worked there many years ago, likely when you were in diapers, just to tell you how old I am. But the bottom line is our population in the town of Kincardine and the surrounding municipalities is growing, but yet they've pretty well stripped all the beds out of the hospital. And I'm not throwing the blame on you. I'm not blaming the people that work there. God bless their souls and the doctors. But the bottom line is, in order to make the health system in this municipality and surrounding areas better, you need a proper facility to do it in. You can have all the plans, and I agree, you can have all the policies, but if you don't have the framework in order to provide that function, what do you got? You know, you can ask all the people all the questions, but the bottom line is simple. Somebody's got to do something about that hospital to get it upgraded so that the facility is a place where people feel safe when they go, instead of, well, if I go there, they'll just take me in, and it's a revolving door situation here. And I don't think that's a good idea. I think we can do better. I think the province can do better, but I think it's going to take everybody, including the public here, and you're right, in order to make things change. But if we don't change, we can have all the services, but if you have nothing to put your services in, what good are they to the public? We have to show, to me, we have to show the public that we can, instead of walk the walk or talk the talk, we can walk the walk. So that's just my take. Okay, thank you.
Happy to respond, Madam Mayor, if you wish.
You're on mute, Anne.
Yep, I am. I always have to mute when when Randy speaks or there's feedback, and I forget, so I apologize. I would like to stick to the Ontario Health Team in general, but if you want a brief reply, I'd like to keep kind of to the topic. Okay.
Sure, I'm happy to respond to Deputy Mayor's questions because they're all good comments. Kincardine has had a number of false starts with redevelopment, and I think all of you know that. Over the years, getting closer and closer, and then the application is pulled away. So we are progressing along that road again. So there's two capital projects underway. One is to redevelop the entire hospital, and it's going to be in two phases. The first phase is the emergency department, diagnostic imaging and lab. The second phase is the inpatient unit. So we're in stage one of a 5-stage process. So we're pushing that along with the ministry. The second capital project is the CT addition, which I heard council referencing earlier on its at the very start of the meeting, and would love to provide council with some additional information around that topic, because I think, I'm not sure if you've got the complete picture there of the perspective, but happy to provide that as well. But there is a need, we're pursuing it, and we want to make sure that those changes get put into place as soon as possible. Capital is a long process in the provincial government, so you need to keep the pressure on, which we're continuing to do.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Stewart.
Thank you very much, Mayor Edie. I'm not sure if your group's really responsible for this. I know you had a couple of bullets. I would like to add a third one, and I'm hoping that you have responsibility, is that we have a shortage of doctors in our rural municipality, but all the municipalities are a shortage of doctors. And in our particular one, we have about 3,000 orphans, so about a quarter of our population doesn't have a doctor. Is that your department? Is that your responsibility? Can we ask you to help us with that sort of type of responsibility?
Madam Mayor, through to the councillor's question. So physician shortages are the big concern for hospitals because we need to make sure we've got proper coverage of all of our services we provide. Nursing coverage is also a significant issue for us. So there's a high demand for nurses across the province. We heard on a provincial call that across 4 Toronto hospitals last week, there's 970 nursing vacancies. So it just gives you an idea of the number of that we need physicians, we need nurses. The simple to answer your question, Councillor, is that there is a provincial recruitment branch of the ministry that's helping with this, but a lot of it comes down to our local community to make sure that we're making this an attractive place to be for physicians and nurses to come work here.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Kennedy.
Thanks for your presentation. Mental health, you know, like I really believe that it's something that is becoming even more important. It's always been really important, but where do you think we're at with it? How do we get better? How do we educate people better about it? And is there any chance you could come back at some point and make a presentation, maybe what we can do better or what's going on in Grey Bruce for public knowledge to really get people talking about it?
Thank you for that question. I'll take a stab at this, Mike, in that children's mental health is my area. I would acknowledge that I am just children's mental health, and I think if we were looking to come back to council at some point in time in the future, I would like to invite Clark McFarlane from the Canadian Mental Health Association and perhaps Naomi Voden from the Owen Sound Hospital with their mental health services as well, to join a conversation with council at some point in the future. But getting the word out, communication, dealing with stigma, dealing with the many misnomers around mental health would be very helpful. Education is a big part of that. And I think it's always advisable that you know all the facts before we go off and make a lot of decisions. So I would be very, very pleased to come back at any point in the future at invitation, or I could look to bring a delegation of mental health lifespan, as I said, with Clark McFarlane and perhaps Naomi from the Owen Sound Hospital with their service delivery in Grey Bruce, to come and be a part of a discussion and continue that on. I would appreciate that.
Okay, thank you, Phil.
Yeah, oh, sorry. Yeah.
I just wanted to say, Phil, I didn't introduce Keystone as, in one sentence, can you just describe Keystone? I have a relative that works there, but I think a lot of people maybe just aren't familiar with Keystone.
Yeah, Keystone Child, Youth and Family Services is the lead agency for children's mental health in Grey and Bruce counties. So we are the go-to. We're the only children's mental health center in Grey and Bruce County for children. We have a number of partners who work in mental health throughout Grey and Bruce, but we are the only children's mental health center dedicated and funded by the Ministry of Health to provide service here. We need to do a much better job of publicizing who we are and what we do, and we're moving in that direction. And being a part of the Ontario Health Team will hopefully provide a larger platform for parents and caregivers and teachers and anyone, pediatricians and doctors, to know who we are and what we are in your community. There's this chap that works at the family health team in Kincardine, and he has opened the door to Keystone coming in and having a presence on site in Kincardine. So we're extremely happy to do that and be a part of that. Now, COVID has slowed that down, but we have a dedicated space in the family health team in Kincardine, and we'll have staff on site 3 to 4 days a week, and perhaps more, as time goes on, to meet the needs of the community in Kincardine. I can share with you, because I did meet with a delegation of Kincardine not long ago, that we have over 100 families in Kincardine right now that Keystone is actively involved in. and we'll continue to have our presence in your community as a Children's Mental Health Center.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other comments?
Can I?
Doug? Yes.
Yeah, tried to do before, but I just, so, well, thanks for your response, Phil, and I sure would like invite you back. I'm hoping that can happen in the near future to talk about mental health for, I am a little bit familiar with Keystone, but I like it to pertain to all ages when you do come back, and different options that people have. And I just think that's important for us to do in the next few months. Thank you.
Great.
Is there anyone else that wants to make a comment or ask a question? Okay, not seeing anyone, but I do want to say that I think this is a wonderful initiative. And the last time I heard, the province was thinking about 35 regional health teams, and I don't know what the number is now. But you're mentioning all the partners, and to pull all the partners together and get a coordinated Ontario health team for Grey Bruce. It'll be a lot of work, lot of organization, but I think we would be better served. I just wondered, are the San or Indigenous people represented on the Ontario health team?
I can share that we've made a number of efforts to reach out to both our communities in Cape Croker and over in Saugeen, and they are aware of what's going on, but they have not been to the table yet as a full partner in the dialogue. As we move into, once our application has been approved by the Ministry of Health, we absolutely see them being part of the ongoing planning process as we move forward. So yes, we will be having those members as a part of our community for sure.
All
and
right.
the last thing, sorry, with your indulgence, your worship, the last thing I wanted to share was that we do have a website that has all of our information of the Ontario Health Team out there. And I would encourage people who are looking for more information to maybe talk to one of your council members who has a connection to our website. We're very fortunate to have two really good co-chairs for our working group, and I'm sure someone on your council could give you that connectivity to the website. I just don't have it in front of me right now, or I would share it.
Okay, thank you. I think your one co-chair is on our council, and I'd like to acknowledge Jerry Glover as the one co-chair, and I'm sorry, I've forgotten the name of the person from, I think, Grey County that is the other co-chair. And so
Dina House.
That's right. And she was the one, I think, that presented to the county. So it's a big undertaking. Good luck to improving healthcare in Grey Bruce. And if we can have our own Ontario Health Team, that would be wonderful. So thank you very much. And Michael Baird, did you have any closing remarks?
No, in the interest of time, Madam Mayor, I'll let you continue on with your meeting, but just thanks from Phil and I and the whole planning committee. And we've got a lot of work to do. We are just starting this process. We've got a lot of work to do, and we should focus on improving the care for the people that we serve here in Grey Bruce.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So next we go to 7.1 reports, the start of reports.
Can we have a break, Madam Mayor, please?
Oh.
Are we out of delegations?
We have a delegation. So
we
I
do.
think yes, that goes with this report.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
And they have to be done or because they have another meeting or something. So.
Okay, fine.
After this delegation. So we have the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan, which is another huge undertaking. I went to one of the first meetings and I thought, wow, pull all these groups together will be some task, but they were up to the task. So we welcome Sarah Cowley and Christine McDonald and Inspector Krista Miller, and our Jen Laurie is our representative too. So she will be involved in this report. So I'll turn it over to Jen first.
Okay, so just to give council the background, on January 1st, 2019, a new legislative amendment to the Police Services Act came into force, mandating that every municipality prepare and adopt a community safety and well-being plan by January 1st, 2021. So council did agree to participate in a joint community safety and well-being plan led by Grey and Bruce counties. And in September 2019, approved a financial commitment of $5,000 towards this initiative. And what has come from this is our draft community safety and well-being plan. And so what we're asking council tonight is that council endorse the recommended priorities and actions contained in the community safety and well-being plan, that council adopt the community safety and well-being plan as a bylaw, and that council approve a commitment of an additional $5,000 towards the community safety and well-being plan, and that's the second phase. But I will hand it over to Sarah, Christine, and Inspector Miller to provide you all the details.
Thank you so much for inviting us tonight to speak to you with regards to the community safety and well-being planning process for Bruce and Grey. We'll dive right in then. I know you have the presentation in front of you. We'll jump to slide 3. And as was just mentioned, we are the largest, we believe at this point in time, we are the largest collaboration of lower tier municipalities with the 2 counties on board and supporting as well. And we believe we're the largest in the province. So we know that our collaboration is unique with regards to coming into legal agreement to create one regional plan. And so we wanted to share that information with you as well. If you could switch to slide 4, please. And next one, perfect. So the framework, which I'm sure you're all familiar with from previous reports, the planning for community safety and well-being really focuses on a model that looks at the upstream interventions and wanting to place more of a focus on the upstream interventions, understanding that risk intervention and incident response are extremely important for people when they find themselves in crisis or with risks that are presenting challenges to their lives or to their families' lives. But the goal is really to focus on those 2 outer rings, the prevention and the social development, because the research shows that investments made in upstream, those social development and prevention activities, really pay out much larger dividends, not just from a crime prevention perspective, which is of course the focus of the planning, but also from a health and well-being perspective as well for residents in our communities. So as we're moving forward with this planning, these are the 4 realms in which we want to make sure we're taking action for each of the priority areas of risk. Next slide, please. And again. And so our advisory committee, not just the largest grouping of municipal partners, we have a very large committee, 72 partners sit at this table. And as you can see, we do have 2 First Nation partners. We have all 8 police services and the 14 police services boards represented. We have child and youth justice services at the table. We have the 3 school boards and Georgian College sitting at our table. And then we have a variety of community, social, health, and mental health service organizations at the table as well. In addition, because we know that good work is occurring not just within agencies, but also within community committees and collaboratives that have existed for years across Bruce and Grey, we also invited the coordinators or co-chairs for a number of community committees and collaboratives, including the OHT, who just spoke to you prior to this. Next slide, please. And so I really wanted to highlight for you that the planning by legislation has to include community consultation. And we were very pleased that we were able to get our website and our community engagement survey up and running February 1st of this year. And the survey closed March 22nd, so just around the time that the restrictions were coming in related to COVID. So we really see our survey as a pre-COVID snapshot related to safety and well-being perceptions and concerns, the feelings of our community residents. And so wanted to highlight, we had almost 2,000 residents participate in that survey. And to give you a little context, Halton Region that participated in this planning as a pilot project a few years ago, they were one of the first communities to do this planning. They had just over 500 residents participate in their first round of community consultations. So we had 3.5 times the residents participate, and they have 3.5 times the population that we do in Grey and Bruce. So we were really pleased with this. Next slide, please. We also wanted to highlight that we have had an epidemiologist involved in this work in order to assist us with the analysis of our survey results. And as we've worked on analyzing local data, I'll speak more about our indicator report of local data that's coming soon. We also made sure that we were connected very closely with the Canadian Municipal Network on Crime Prevention, that Halton Region Community Safety and Wellbeing Collaborative, as I just mentioned, and also the Ontario Municipal Social Services Association has a working group of coordinators for community safety and wellbeing planning happening across the province. So I'm well connected with my partners in the various counties and municipal regions across Ontario. Next slide, please. Our timeline, as you heard, project kicked off last September. It's been a fast and furious 14 months. We did have a small pause related to COVID and its impact on residents in our organizations, late March, April. But because we had already closed off our survey, we decided to continue to move forward with our planning process, where a number of communities paused and actually are only now starting to move back towards their planning processes. And here we are, you can see November and December, we are looking for plan adoption by the municipalities. We're planning sustainability for the coming year, and we are working very hard on our indicator report of local data. Next slide, please. So our model, this was our model that we started with. It has not changed greatly over the past 14 months. And what I wanted to highlight for all of you is that we are now moving to action. So phase 2 next year, 2021, is moving to action. And this is where we'll be looking at the identification or creation of action tables, where we'll really pull in those subject matter experts to help us create really detailed plans of action for each of the priority areas of risk. And this will also include evaluating outcomes of those plans and the impacts to the communities, hopefully the positive impacts to the communities. And this will be supported by the coordinator for this project, as well as the steering committee and advisory committee and participating organizations. Next slide, please. So what are the priority areas for action? If you slip to the next slide, we're going to talk about 5. So originally when we conceptualized this planning, and it has been an iterative process, we've learned a lot over the last 14 months, we thought we would look at the top 3 regionally. But when we dove into the perceptions and the local data, we realized we really couldn't tease out number 4 and 5. So we do have 5 areas included in this plan. And again, there's a lot of work, good work being done across Bruce and Gray in each of these areas. So on the next slide, you'll see addictions and substance use as priority at risk area 1. A few key points to highlight here that we'll be looking at as key areas of concern for action include the fact that regular heavy drinking continues to be a known issue in our community, with self-reported use in Bruce and Gray tracking higher than the rest of Ontario. This is historical and this continues. This has not changed. We also know that of emergency department visits, over half are linked to alcohol, and we've also seen a 2.5 to 3 times increase for opioid-related visits. We know that high school student alcohol and cannabis use is increasing, and that this, although this concern is not necessarily trended at this point in time because we haven't been able to trend since the legalization of cannabis in 2018, we are building that data at this point in time. We do know, though, that addiction and substance use is the cause of increasing hospitalization and death in the region. On the next slide, you'll see priority risk area 2, mental health. No surprise to anyone working in the community. We know that self-rated mental health indicators show that approximately 20% of our residents are experiencing a lot of stress, and 15% are seeking help for mental health issues. We know that, again, students, more than 30% of grade 7 to 12 students report they experience moderate to severe psychological distress, and a third of those want to talk to someone about their mental health but don't know where to turn. We know that we've seen an increase in both EMS and police services calls for mental health concerns in the area, and we know that 211 calls for mental health reasons have also increased. Our data also shows that self-harm emergency department visit rates have tripled among young females locally, and this is comparable to the province. But what isn't comparable is the fact that Bruce and Gray males aged 25 to 44 years of age have higher hospitalizations and death by suicide than the rest of Ontario. When we look at priority risk area 3, crime prevention, we are working with, of course, analyzing the local police data for the 4 local police services and the 4 OPP detachments. But and as we are diving into that for the various parts of our region, we are also looking at the criminal court data. So what we know from the criminal court cases is that trends are increasing over time for most offenses. So from 2017 to 2019, they saw a 17% to 27% increase for most offenses. And an interesting statistic we found was that although overall assault injuries are comparable to Ontario rates, the Bruce and Gray rate of emergency department visits due to assault is higher than the Ontario rate. So this is something that we'll want to explore more closely as we begin to moving towards action. When we look at priority risk area 4, housing and homelessness, we do know that we have more owned dwellings and far fewer rental dwellings than the rest of Ontario and Canada. And we know that some of our areas do have more subsidized housing. We also know that over 15% of homeowners and almost 50% of renters in Bruce and Gray spend more than 30% of their monthly income on shelter costs. And this is a situation that can leave them only 1 to 2 paychecks away from homelessness, from not being able to pay for their shelter. We do know that average house prices are increasing, although they remain lower than Ontario, and that we have very low rental vacancy rates in our region. Again, similar to Ontario, but the situation this creates is that if someone can't afford the home that they're owning and need to look at renting, or if they're in a rental situation that's unsafe or less than ideal for their family size or circumstance, there's nowhere else to go. There is very little stock in the market for people to move to. We also know that housing waitlists are increasing, as are calls to 211 for housing issues. When we look at priority risk area 5, poverty and income, we know that median household incomes in our region are lower than Ontario, and you can see they're the lowest in Owen Sound, Hanover, and South Bruce Peninsula. And we know that approximately 20% of our youth in the region continue to live in poverty. This is the highest in Huron-Kinloss, followed by Chatsworth, Owen Sound, Southgate, and Erin Elderslie. We also see a correlated trend from various organizations showing increasing needs for support such as Ontario Works, ODSP, the United Way Backpack Program, utility assistance funding, and 211 calls related to food and meals and utilities. We also know, in addition to the residents that report that they are spending more than 30% of their income on housing, that 5% of those in the past year had not paid rent or mortgage on time. 18% of residents report not paying other bills on time, and 9% reported they ate less because they didn't have enough money for food. So when we look at all of these systemic, large, complex, cross-sector concerns, we do want to continue to focus on those local solutions and collective impact. So the reason we have such a broad advisory committee is because we know that these solutions have to come from cross-sector committees. They can't come or be solved from one sector alone. And so we also know that we want to leverage the good cross-sector work that's already happening in our region. And the way we want to do that is to enhance the collaboration and coordination between the various organizations, committees, and initiatives that are already happening in the community, so we can ensure that everything is working very efficiently, and so that we can start to target any gaps that have arisen through that assessment. Next slide, please. So a piece of this will, of course, be facilitating that outcome evaluation. And so we are currently developing an indicator report with the epidemiologist support. And so what this will do is, within all 10 priority areas of risk, so we've talked about 5 in the plan, but there are 5 others as well. For all 10 of those priority areas of risk, we are collating local data for our region that will give us a baseline indicator, so areas of concern that we should be looking at if we're addressing concerns in any one of those areas, but also will give us a baseline for evaluation, so we can determine if we are really moving the dial as we start to take action in those 5 areas. And certainly we want it to be a resource for the advisory committee, action tables, and the organizations that are participating. Next slide, please. So sustainability, as previously mentioned, we are working on the budget for the coming year. We know that it's very important to have a coordinator to continue to move this work forward to implementation, so that we don't lose the momentum that we've really gained in phase 1 of this project. And that by pooling the resources across the 16 municipalities and 2 counties, we will hopefully begin to see that reduction in the duplication of work, and the overall implementation costs for each municipality is really reduced to quite a small amount compared to municipalities that are completing this on their own. Next slide, please. And again, thank you. And so next steps for our project then, as we move from phase 1 into phase 2, of course, we're presenting to all of the municipal councils for approval. The website is getting a refresh, and that plan and indicator report will be posted both on our safety and wellbeing website as well as the participating agency and municipality websites. We'll work on the budget confirmation and ensuring that the work of the coordinator is continuing. We'll be diving into those action tables for the priority areas of risk and doing an in-depth review of that local data to really identify what are those actions we need for each of those priority areas. We'll also be looking at future engagement, community engagement with regards to the community survey, engagement survey that we administered last year. We want to do that again, of course, to see the impacts of COVID and if needs or perceptions have changed. And we'll be working with municipalities and those action tables around actual community engagement around action planning. We also know under the legislation that this planning process involves monitoring, evaluation, and revision of the plan with annual progress reports to the advisory committee, councils, and the ministry. Thank you for your time. Christine and Krista are also here if there are questions for any one of us.
Okay, thank you very much. An excellent presentation. And I'm going to ask all of council if they have any questions or comments now. There's some about your data. It's amazing. So if you have questions about the data or anything else, Councillor Couture. And then Councillor Haight.
All right. Thanks. That was a great presentation. What is the difference between what you're doing and what the community safety committees are doing?
So it's a great question, and that's certainly something that has really come to light in Grey Bruce. As I said, we've got lots of good work happening in the community. What the community safety and wellbeing planning process and legislation allows us to do is to really coordinate that work. So the work of the Safe Communities Committees actually falls under this planning process. So the goal would be for us to work to align that work within this plan alongside other pieces of work that are happening, like the community drug and alcohol strategy work, the poverty task force work, the violence prevention Grey Bruce work, to really align that and help coordinate that work and help that collaboration improve between those committees so that we're all seeing that we are taking a piece of the work that has to happen across the communities.
Okay, so you're not working in isolation of each other?
No, no, absolutely not. No, and they sit at our tables. All their co-chairs for those Safe Communities committees are on the advisory committee as well.
Oh, okay, great.
And Councillor Haight.
Actually, Maureen beat me to it with the question.
Right, Councillor Stewart.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I'm just wondering, I know that we put some seed money towards this, about $5,000 in how much funding are you going to require in 2021, or are you going to require any funding at all?
Yes, so the request for the budget for 2021 is the same as the budget that was presented in 2020. So looking for the $5,000 again for the commitment.
Mayor Edie, are we planning to move that tonight, or we're going to?
I think so.
Thank you. I'd like to move that motion for 5,000 funding right now, please.
Well, no, it's in the it's in the.
You're doing great work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Just have to get back here.
Councillor Glover, Your Worship.
Oh, sorry.
No, so I just have a comment. I know this has been a significant project that Sarah and her team and the state courts have been working on for a significant amount of time. I think this time last year, just sort of talking about getting it off the ground, and what you and your team have been able to accomplish since then has been nothing but a feat. So I just want to recognize your contributions to this significant feat by bringing all those stakeholders together. And good on you. You're working in the right direction, and pleased that we're supporting this going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Glover. Could you just give council an idea, when you had your meetings, I attended one, of how many people were in the room from the different organizations? Do you have just a ballpark figure?
Sorry, with regards to the community engagement?
No, just when you have a meeting.
So when we have when we hold an advisory committee meeting of the 72 partners, is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yeah, so we generally have upwards of at least 35 people at the meetings.
Right. So I think it's wonderful that you've coordinated that quickly, especially through the pandemic. So if there are no other questions, we'll go to the recommendation, and I'll let Jen Laurie read the recommendation.
So the recommendation is that council receive the report, that they endorse the recommended priorities and actions contained, and that they will bring back the community safety and wellbeing plan bylaw for December the 14th, and that council approve a commitment of $5,000 towards the phase 2 of the plan.
Thank you. Did you name a mover and seconder?
No.
Okay, so we'll need a mover and seconder for this recommendation. Moved by Councillor Stewart and seconded by Councillor Haight. Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Any opposed? So the motion carried. Thank you very much for taking the time, and I hope you didn't have to wait too long to get to this agenda item. So keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us. We appreciate it.
Okay. Now, council, it's the break. I think we need, we'll say, what, 7 to 8 minutes? Is that long enough? Or will we make it 10? Make it around 10. Okay, thank you. So I think we have a quorum. I'm going to call the meeting back to order now. And we'll go with 7.2, Public Works. And it's the COVID-19 Resilience Infrastructure Stream Grant application. Always good news when I hear grant in the title. So we'll ask Adam Weiser to give the report. Have we got Adam? So we'll ask our CAO. Do you know if Adam is available? Okay, good.
I believe he was on the call.
I'll try here again. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now, Adam.
All right. Sorry about that, Mary Edie. I must have been on mute still. All right, so I'll kickstart from where I was. So the ICIP program, there have been several previous funding streams. The recent one, the COVID-19 resilience stream, was recently announced. One of the differences with this stream is that it's being delivered with 100% funding. So a breakdown of 80% federal and 20% provincial with 0 municipal funds required. So staff reviewed the criteria. There are 4 categories. And of those 4 categories, the category that we felt we best aligned with was under the disaster mitigation and adaptation. So within that sector, shoreline remediation and prevention projects for erosion were aligned with that criteria. In the 2021 draft budget that will be delivered to council, there is a project along Sunset Drive from concession 12 to the pier area, as well as another section from number 20 to number 42. I apologize, the report did not contain the description of concession 12 to the pier, but the monetary value aligns with that. So in the 2021 budget, we were hoping to have supportive council to proceed with a project in the amount of $275,000 to remediate the shoreline and protect it from further erosion. Sunset Drive, the lake is adjacent to the roadway there, so it has caused us a fair number of issues this year. We've spent a significant amount of dollars even within the 2020 operating budget to repair some areas that have been impacted. So specific to the application and the program, the application deadline is December 21st of 2020. They're anticipating decisions will be announced in the spring of 2021, and all projects are to start by September 30th, 2021 and be completed by December 31st, 2021. So that essentially gives a 12-month timeline from where we stand now to go from start to finish. So that's possibly another reason why we felt that this project would align well. We feel that the material would be available, the design would be consistent with what we had completed along Goddard Street in Kincardine this year, and has been supported by both the coastal engineers and the Conservation Authority to date.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Does anybody have any questions for Adam or comments? Councillor Kennedy and then Councillor Stewart.
Yeah, not for Adam. I had a couple phone calls in the last 5 minutes that our TV feed has lost the sound. If we know how to fix that, they would be happy.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Jen White's looking into that right now. And Councillor Stewart?
Thank you very much, Mary Edie. Thank you very much, Adam. Being policy chair, I fully agree with this. I live every day beside the water. I know exactly. Could we just extend this whole project all the way to Kincardine? If the federal government's paying 80 and the provincial government's paying 20, we could probably fill in quite a few blanks all the way along there. But without that, yes, I can fully endorse this project in this. Just go ahead for the funding, please.
Okay, any other comments? All right, so we'll have the recommendation, and do you need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation? You have the mover and seconder. Okay.
Okay, so the recommendation is as in the report that council directs staff to apply for the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program COVID-19 Resilience Infrastructure Stream Local Government Intake Grant to obtain funding to be allocated to the 2021 Sunset Drive Shoreline Erosion Project. That's moved by Laura Kennedy, seconded, pardon me, Laura Haight, seconded by Doug Kennedy.
Ooh.
Thank
Our
you.
secret love affair is out, Doug.
Oh yeah, don't
Don't
tell
tell
their
Gert.
significant others.
Lucky guy, lucky guy.
So this is a tough decision, right? All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? It's great. So thanks, Adam. And you said the engineering's kind of already started for the area based on what was done this year.
Essentially, Mary D, we would follow the same design. So it really is just taking some aerial footage and applying the shoreline as well as the buffer area for what we would install for large rock.
Okay, thanks. So you have the next item as well, the winter operations COVID support.
Yes. So thank you. So I guess naturally with COVID-19 and the risks involved with that, a number of the lower tiers, along with the county, engaged in a conversation going back a little bit here. And then through that discussion, we felt it prudent to loop in the balance of the lower tiers within the county. The purpose for our discussion at the time was to talk about how each municipality and the county would ensure or attempt to ensure compliance with minimum maintenance standards to maintain our operations if one of our shops or one of our areas were impacted by COVID-19 and our staffing resources were depleted. So through that, one of the first things that came to light for all of us in the group, I don't believe any of us were aware, and I had attached or appended to the report. Back in 2007, the lower tiers in the county entered into a bylaw, which was for mutual assistance, under emergency scenarios. In further looking into that, I do believe, as well as a number of the other lower tiers, that agreement currently enables us to offer support to our neighboring municipalities and to the county, should it be such a scenario, such as our resources are depleted because of COVID. However, in light of that, I wanted to bring this to council's attention, and then also to consider drafting the report from the manner that if we needed to make amendments to that agreement, that we could proceed with doing that and have council's support. Any of the maintenance that would be performed, that we would be supporting any of the other lower tiers or the county, would be at the expense of the party receiving that maintenance. Some of the municipalities are unionized, as well as the county. Kincardine, as an example, currently is not. And we do have some redundancy built in, utilizing staff from areas such as the Waste Management Center, and having backups through our mechanics and some other staff that can keep us up to full complement should we lose a few people. However, I think it's a good initiative for each of us to I guess have put on the table again, and to bring back to our respective councils to make sure that across the county we are coming together as one in a time of need. So I wanted to get this before council and hopefully receive your support. One thing we have done is we have worked out some logistics in principle as to how we would request supporting services and how those services would be deployed. And as an example, with Kincardine, myself and the road supervisor are currently engaging through some communication to figure out where would be the best locations should we need to bring in a third party from one of the other lower tiers or the county to best help service us and keep all of our roads and sidewalks maintained.
Okay. Thank you, Adam. Does anybody have any comments or questions for Adam? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to the recommendation.
This recommendation would be moved by Maureen Couture, seconded by Jerry Glover, that council be authorizing the mayor and CAO to sign documentation between the lower tiers within Bruce County for emergency operations support during declared emergencies.
Okay, all in favor?
Yes.
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 Any opposed? And that carried. Next, we move to emergency services. 7.3A, the tanker rebody update, and we'll ask Chief Kevin McNeely to present this report.
Thank you, Mayor Edie. Good evening, Council. Tonight's report before you is the final stage of the refurbishment of the tanker out of the Kincardine Hall. If you recall, back in June, we changed direction from purchasing a complete unit and felt it was more economical to purchase a cabin chassis and go through the refurbishment ourselves, which when the numbers were put together, it was a significant savings. So in October, I had vendors bid on the second phase of the work, which is the removal of the body, refurbishing it, and reinstalling it on the new cabin chassis, which you have already approved earlier. So at this point, we had 3 vendors that were able to bid on the scope of work. One of them is Darch Fire. At the time when I was speaking with Darch Fire, a lot of this work was going to have to be done in Quebec, but they have since informed me that they may be able to accommodate it out of Cambridge. Their bid came in at $51,813. The thing that I find concerning is the amount of time that they're going to require, which is 75 days. The second bid was from Cottrell Heavy Equipment out of Kincardine. They come in at $46,600, and their timeline is roughly 45 days. The third bidder, they wanted to do the complete cabin chassis unit. So in my opinion, their bid was non-compliant for what we required. For financial, the financial on this one, we originally 6 months ago figured we'd be around $160,000. Cabin chassis was $116,220, and if the recommendation tonight is awarded, will be about $163,640. I know this is slightly over what we anticipated, but the original funding envelope that of $400,000, there is some money in there that would absorb this additional amount of money. So because of the procurement policy, I do require council's approval on this, and I'll let you comment or decide.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Couture.
Sorry, having trouble with my devices and I can't get the agenda in front of me. Does the recommendation recommend Cottrell?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. I have no questions. I support it.
All right, anything else? Seeing none, we'll go to the recommendation.
So the recommendation as in the report is moved by Bill Stewart, seconded by Randy Ropel, that council award the quotation for the tanker rebody to Cottrell Heavy Equipment in the amount of $46,600.
All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? And the motion carried. So next, 7.3B, the topic is establish and regulate a fire department and emergency services. So for the report, our fire chief, Kevin McNeely, and I highly suspect our CAO, Sharon Chambers.
Yes. So I'll present if that's okay, Mayor Edie.
Pardon?
I will present.
Okay, there's just a bit of feedback there. I'm going to go on mute while you present.
Okay, can everyone else hear me okay?
A bit of an echo, Sharon. Okay.
Okay, I'm not sure what's going on, but
We can hear
hopefully
you fine. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so the report before you is an update to the establishing and regulating bylaw for the fire department. The municipality and the fire department have completed our bargaining process, which has concluded in an agreement on salary and benefits for the period of January 1st, 2020 to December 31st, 2023. And this aligns with the negotiations that took place for both the non-management and management groups earlier this year. The fire department negotiations took a little longer than our other employee groups due to the complexity of the pay structure, which included salaries, hourly rates of pay, flat rates, per diems, and so it's quite a complex mishmash, the current pay structure. During the negotiation, staff raised a number of concerns about the wording and the entitlements that were contained in the E&R bylaw. The existing pay structure was very difficult to administer, causing a lack of clarity and a high instance of error. The negotiations were put on hold due to the pandemic. However, they did resume in the fall, and in consultation with Human Resources and Chief McNeely, a new pay structure found in Appendix C to the new bylaw was put forward for consideration for the negotiating representatives. This new structure will align compensation more accurately with the level of risk associated with the responsibilities and will reduce administrative errors. The structure also introduces a new salary for acting captains and firefighters. The fire department is paid biannually in January and July of each year. We will need to provide retroactive pay for the period of January 1st to June 30th and have agreed with the fire department on an implementation path forward for the remainder of 2020 and subsequent years. A virtual meeting was held where the full membership could attend to receive an explanation of the new pay structure from the CAO and the manager of HR. As per the bylaw, the deputy chiefs are given the opportunity to bargain independently of the other firefighters, and it has been agreed that the deputy chiefs will receive an annual salary increase of 2.5% for 2020, which aligns with the other non-management and management groups. And we're going to wait to negotiate the subsequent years until we hire a new fire chief, just to accurately identify the roles and responsibilities to ensure that's aligning with the compensation. So these operational changes have been captured in the bylaw, and the annual percentage increases, as I said, align with all of the other employee groups, and they are aligned in Appendix C. So I would like to thank Chief McNeely for his assistance on this, the members of the Council Negotiating Committee, and also the members of the Fire Department Negotiating Committee. I think we've got something that's much more workable and will be easier to negotiate in subsequent years. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Couture.
I just want to point out there were quite a long list of things that the firefighters had concerns about. And I would say a good half of those were administrative in nature, not related to salary and benefits. So those were sort of pulled aside and dealt with by the CAO and the fire chief and the HR people. So I thought that was good to separate those things out, because the negotiating committee is there for salary and benefits, and we felt then we were concentrating on the right thing. So it was a long drawn out thing, but there was circumstances that interfered, not anybody's fault. And we're just glad that they'll be done before Christmas, I hope.
Yes, you're correct. It was a very complicated process, and but we persevered through COVID, had to pause, as everybody said. But I think we're in a much better place, both for our firefighters and for our negotiations for the next time, especially for negotiations, by pulling those parts out. And so I do too thank everybody involved. Yes, Councillor Stewart. I think you're on mute.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Sharon, will this allow us to get into, I know their payroll was crazy and everything else. Will this allow us to get into an automatic payroll system down the road, bringing these guys aligned with the rest of us?
It certainly helps. We still do have some complex pay structures in the municipality in terms of employees working in different departments and at different rates. And this is something that we are trying to address through org review so that we can be in a better position to automate our payroll better in the future.
Great. Thanks, Sharon.
Are there any other questions or comments? So we'll move to the recommendation. And
so the recommendation is moved by Laura Haight, seconded by Doug Kennedy. And it is as in the report that council approved the bylaw to establish and regulate a fire department.
All in favor?
Yes.
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 Any opposed? Okay, and the motion carried. And the bylaw carried. Sorry. Next is 7.4, and this is the COVID-19 declared emergency report, and I turn it back to our CAO, Sharon Chambers.
Okay, thank you. Just a couple of items tonight. Our emergency control group continues to meet, and we're back to a weekly schedule as the case numbers escalate across the region. Mary Edie and I participated in a call with Dr. Era and Bruce County officials last Wednesday. Although case numbers are still rising, Dr. Era has indicated that many of the new cases that they're seeing have been identified as close contacts for previously identified cases and have been self-isolating. So this is positive in the sense that it does reduce the possibility of spread. Dr. Era explained that there are several indicators used to assess whether a region will move to another stage. And those indicators are the epidemiology. So for example, the weekly incident rate, the percent positivity, outbreak trends, level of community transition, health system capacity, so hospital and ICU capacity, and public health system capacity. So what is the ability of the public health unit to case and contact follow up within 24 hours? The indicators are generally assessed based on the previous 2 weeks of information, but if there is a need to move sooner into another level, then if there's a rapidly worsening trend, then that can be done as well. We did hold a COVID-19 internal working group today just to discuss the development of work plans in anticipation that we could be moving into subsequent phases in the public health framework. And this will allow us to be prepared in advance of provincial announcements, as well as communicate to staff, council, and public about what to expect if we move through those phases. So just as an example, we may look at what point, if we move into, for example, a phase red, would that trigger work from home or creating shifts in order to have that business continuity. So we just really want to be thinking ahead and be prepared. We know that staff and council are experiencing COVID fatigue along with many members of our community, and we plan to arrange a session in the new year on resiliency and mental health just to provide support for our council and staff. Staff attended a meeting with Dr. Era, representatives from Hanover and Owen Sound to check in on the status of the recovery centers. There really was nothing new to report. It was a very brief meeting, and we will reconvene again in January. So that's all I had, but I would be happy to answer any questions from council.
Councillor Couture.
Yes, Sharon and I have been talking, and then Karen as well, about having some washrooms open near the parks down near the lake for people walking, because again, for physical and mental well-being, more people are doing that. And the working group discussed this, I understand, and because the washrooms, the brick washrooms, will help with them, are not winterized and the water's now been shut off. they've offered to put a couple of porta potties in Dunsmore Park and perhaps a little further down the boardwalk. So I would support that, and I don't see that they need council approval for that, but I just thought I'd mention it because people are using construction site porta potties, and that's not exactly kosher. So I just thought I'd mention that.
Yes, thanks for bringing that to our attention. And I do still meet with the Bruce County CAOs on a regular basis as well, just to talk about, things that they may be implementing. And there is certainly a theme around trying to provide more outdoor services to get people outside during the winter and providing those types of facilities for people just to keep them outdoors and try to reduce the spread from people being indoors all the time.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions for Sharon? The one thing, Sharon, is other staff have mentioned to me and probably to you is our budget meeting. We had agreed to meet in person. I personally think it is mainly for information, and I personally think we should stick with Zoom. But if other people have any comments, our numbers have been pretty good this week, but we had quite a November, quite a ride in November. So this is we've just got 1 weekend in December. So staff kind of have to know to plan for the December 16th meeting. Councillor Couture.
I think we stick with Zoom for the foreseeable future. We also have an AGM for Saugeen Valley scheduled to try and be done in person in January, and we've nixed that idea, and it will be Zoom as well.
Yes. Just with the holidays coming up and our second wave is surprising us. So I think we need to stick with Zoom. Do any other councillors have any comments? So Zoom for budget then, any other comments? Okay, so that's direction to staff then. Okay. Did you have anything else, Sharon?
No, that's all I have for this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So 7.4B, the shoreline protection works on municipal lands policy planning. And Michelle.
Okay, this policy is to provide municipal staff with a process for handling and responding to applications received from individuals requesting to install and/or construct works within the road allowance or on lands within the municipality's jurisdiction for the purpose of shoreline erosion protection. The policy applies to all new applications and/or repairs to existing works. By entering into the access and identification agreement, the municipality is giving the landowner permission to install the works, not approving the works. The approval body is Saugeen Valley. Throughout the report, I've indicated what the process would be, and also attached to the report is the application form, the policy, and a copy of the agreement itself. And these would apply, as noted, for works that are completed on the shore road allowance. The applicants, if they can't provide the work on their own property, they can make application to have special circumstances to have it on the shore road allowance. And as part of the report, we're requesting that the mayor and the CAO are designated to execute the agreements, just to allow for the timely manner that the works need to proceed when the applications come in. The agreements are for a 20-year term, and after the 20 years, they can be inspected and see whether the works are still required or need updating or anything like that. And if so, they can sign in another agreement and an extension for another 20 years. The policy indicates that there's a security requirement, an agreement cost, and the agreements are registered on title of the owners that we're entering into. And also just to note, just from the direction previously from council, we have worked with about 5. 1, the works are completed, and the other 3 or 4 are working with the same contractor and going to proceed with their works along the shore allowance as well. So as we were aware, there was some in the works, so we've kept them going in a timely manner to proceed.
Thank you, Michelle. It's a good report. We were just distracted here with the lights going off. So Randy, that's Randy's job, is to get the lights back on. Okay, Councillor Couture. First.
Sorry, I keep talking now. I was kind of quiet earlier. Anyway,
And then
I've had a number of phone calls from shoreline people on this issue, and they're very somewhat upset because this kind of came out of left field at them, and it did come out of left field at us as well. I've tried to explain our reasoning for it. I have a question, 2 questions. The fee of $1,000 being charged, is that a cost recovery or is that a ballpark? Because that seems very, very high. Secondly, the deposit amount that's being requested, when do they get that back?
Okay, so question number 1, the $1,000, that is a deposit as well. So and that is to cover the cost of the registration of the agreement. So whatever monies is not used would be fully refunded back to the applicant. And the securities, we did have a discussion on the securities, and in lieu of doing a percentage of the cost of the works, because there's such a variance in the cost of construction that some of the applicants will be doing. We just went with the $5,000 deposit. So, and that is as soon as the work is completed, it's inspected, and it provided the lakeshore, doesn't have ruts and the equipment is gone and everything is kosher, the securities are fully refunded back.
Thank you. That's a very good answer, and I can get back to a few people now.
Okay, Councillor Stewart.
Well, Councillor Maureen, what calls you didn't get, I got. I really do think there's some concerns. A lot of people have fed me back on this stuff. A lot of people think we're doing a quick one during the winter when most of the seasonal people that will be impact on this are away. I think we need to take some time. I have about 20 questions here, and I don't want to take up, and considering that this meeting's pretty full, could we defer this and bring it back in January if the council agrees? Because we need some more input from the public. It came sort of as a quick surprise, and only having 2 or 3 days looking at this, there's just too many areas that need to be questioned. So I'm going to recommend that maybe make a motion that we bring this back at the end of January or February when we have some more input from the public and more time to look at this. Thank you.
Oh, okay. So I just want to ask Michelle first. It depends on the winter we have. Will the works that are a lot of them able to be continued if we have kind of a mild winter, or do they have to wait now till the spring?
Well, my understanding is there's about 3 or 4 that are working with the same contractor that are hoping to get it completed. Like it maybe has started. I haven't talked to them in a day or so, but they're hoping to get this completed like right now. And so I guess if we're going, if the option is to defer it, then I would need direction on how to deal with the applicants that I'm working with from the previous direction.
That's sort of my concern, is that we don't want to hold them up at all. The lake's does get higher and higher. I know what you're saying, Bill, for sure, because I've had the questions too. Is there a problem that we don't understand why we're doing this? Because I fully understand it, because it was explained to us at great length by a lawyer. But I don't want to hold anybody up, or are these people just going to they'll be outside the system?
Yes, I'm sort of the same. I don't want to hold anybody up, and our winters aren't that bad sometimes, but we do get the winds, and if people are working on projects or have a minor, a minor project they want to get done over the winter when it's possible. That's my viewpoint. Dave.
Yeah, why don't we, anybody that's already started their project, let them finish it. And then you're not holding anyone up. And if there's any changes for them that they have to make after, then that will be their decision.
So then the fees have these people paid their fees and
No.
Get their deposit amount? Michelle?
Okay, any of the ones that I'm working with, yes, they have submitted in the deposit. One of the applicants has completed the project and the money has been refunded. So we are, working away with them to get the project done. The other ones that I'm working with, yes, they've signed the agreements and submitted in the securities, and we've given the approval to Saugeen Valley so that they can issue their permit, and they're going ahead with it. Yes.
Okay. So let anybody that's already started finish theirs.
But if they're paying the fee and paying the deposit, they're working within the policy that we aren't going to pass yet. Can I suggest we pass the policy as is and then review it in 6 months? And if we have to make changes to it, and if there's refunds required or anything like that, we can do it. It's not going to be huge. It's not going to be hundreds and hundreds. But this way people can move along, get their thing done. We've already got the agreements in place and perhaps even registered. And but yet we can promise to review it in 6 months and see if there's any flaws and answer any questions that the public has.
Because you hit the point, Maureen. I don't think, the overall thing, I think people understand where we're coming from. It's when you start getting into those agreements, a couple of lawyers from Bay Street looked at them and there was a lot of questions. So we could be running into a lot of problems and a lot of legal problems with this because they're trying to figure out ownership of the rocks. Where does M&R come in responsibility? There's so many questions. So I agree with you. If we wanted to go ahead with the policy, let's say until May 1st and then have a review, I would agree with that. And then we can bring everyone together and really take a look at it. And if we have to make some changes, we'll make changes then. Because we'll get a lot of input then after that. So feedback. Thanks. Yeah. Okay. Can we do that?
Sounds good to me.
So I think too, with the high water levels, some people, if we deferred it or we didn't pass it, I think it might create problems for others as well. And when we have the two things, the municipality of Kincardine inspects, and then Saugeen Valley is the final authority, it does take some time sometimes. So we'll have the recommendation then, and we approve it with a review in May.
Correct.
Yep.
Okay. So we'll go to the recommendation now. We'll just as amended.
Yeah, so it'd be the recommendation as set out in the report as amended, as Anne just indicated, and that would include the authorizing the mayor and CAO to execute the access and identification agreements. And that is moved by Dave Kyler and seconded by Jerry Glover.
Thank you. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Any opposed? Okay. So Michelle has a path forward now. Next, we have a 7C, the Integrity Commissioner agreement renewal. And that's you, Jen.
So our code of conduct policy requires that the council appoint an integrity commissioner. And in 2017, we appointed Harold G. Elston for a 2-year period. And we did that after participating in a countywide request for proposal. Section 4A of the agreement that we passed provides the option for the municipality to renew this appointment for an additional 2-year term with the same terms and pricing. The appointment of Mr. Elston will expire on December 31st, 2020, and staff are recommending that the agreement be renewed. There was a few changes in the agreement. And one of the things that has come up is that the integrity commissioners are now able to provide information regarding municipal conflict of interest. So that's also been included into the amended agreement.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for our clerk? No questions? Okay, so we'll go to the recommendation.
The recommendation is moved by Bill Stewart, seconded by Randy Ropel, and that'll be that council appoint Harold G. Alston as the Integrity Commissioner for January 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2023.
Good. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? And that carried. Next. So do we still have Karen Kiefer with us for the ammonia refrigeration tender for the Davidson Center? Wonderful.
I'm here as long as you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you, Karen, but just keep speaking up.
Okay, so the municipality has been aware that the current Freon refrigeration system at the Davidson Center Arena would need to be changed to an ammonia system due to regulatory changes ceasing the production of R22. The project was included in the 2020 capital budget. However, due to COVID-19, there was an inability to procure the goods at the manufacturer level. Therefore, a project extension was received. This extension included the approval of the Ontario Trillium Foundation, who provided the municipality with a $120,000 grant for this project, and they approved an extension to June 1st, 2021. To meet the June 1st, 2021 deadline, and to ensure that the successful company has sufficient time to secure the new refrigeration system, the project went out for tender this fall. 4 submissions were received, and it should be noted that the original estimate was $900,000, which was obviously very high given the range of submissions received and that are included within the report. The lowest bid was submitted by SCS Refrigeration Inc. Staff checked the references that were provided for SCS, and there were no issues with regards to similar type projects or installations that they have completed. Therefore, staff are recommending that the DC ammonia refrigeration tender be awarded to SCS Refrigeration Inc. in the amount of $403,853.89, and that total is inclusive of the non-refundable portion of HST, and the project will be completed by the June 1st, 2021 deadline.
Thank you, Karen. Any questions for Karen? Yes, Councillor Stewart.
Thank you very much for saving us $500,000. That's outstanding performance. Go ahead, you know, as far as I'm concerned, we can't sign that contract quick enough. So outstanding. So that's great. Saving us $500,000. We need it. Thanks.
All right. So we'll move to the recommendation then. Oh, sorry, Councillor Kennedy, I see your hand now.
That's right. Just yeah, just like Karen said, you know, the Listo Arena, different local arenas use this company. So, and the good thing about doing it in April and May, it's not going to really interrupt anything, you know, at the Davidson Center. So that's a positive too. Okay, thanks.
Yes, that was my biggest fear, is that it would go down at the wrong time the last couple of years. So this is good. So we'll move to the recommendation.
Okay, and the recommendation as is laid out in the report, as Karen read, and that's moved by Laura Haight, seconded by Doug Kennedy.
All right. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? And that carried. That's good news. So County Council update, I'm going to skip over tonight, except that on behalf of our council, I'd like to congratulate Janice Jackson from South Bruce Peninsula. She is the new warden of Bruce County, which most of you probably know by now. And we'll go to the consent agenda. Was there anything people had from the consent agenda tonight? All right. Seeing nothing, we will have our motion to adjourn committee of the whole.
Okay, so this is moved by Dave Kyler, seconded by Maureen Couture, that the committee of the whole adjourn at 7:42 p.m.
All in favor?
Yes.
Any opposed? And we are back to council for matters arising from committee of the whole. So I'll turn it over to our clerk.
Okay, so the first one is the consent agenda, and that's moved by Bill Stewart, seconded by Randy Ropel, that council approve the recommendations contained in the consent agenda dated Monday, December 7th, 2020, and direct staff to proceed with all necessary administrative action.
Good. Okay, all in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Carried.
Second one is the COVID resilience infrastructure, and that's moved by Dave Kyler, seconded by Maureen Couture, that council directs staff to apply for the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program COVID-19's Resilience Infrastructure Stream Local Government Intake Grant to obtain funding to be allocated to the 2021 Sunset Drive Shoreline Erosion Project.
All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? And that carried.
Next, we move on to winter operations COVID support, and that's that council authorized the mayor and CAO to sign documentation between the lower tiers within Bruce County for emergency operations support during declared emergency, and that's moved by Jerry Glover, seconded by Randy Ropel.
All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? And that carried.
So next is the tanker rebody, that the tanker rebody cultural heavy equipment request for quotation acceptance bylaw be deemed to be read a first, second, and third time, finally passed and numbered as bylaw 2020-161. That's moved by Laura Haight, seconded by Doug Kennett.
All in favor?
Yes. Yes.
Opposed? And that carried.
So next is the establish and regulate fire department. So moved by Dave Kyler, seconded by Maureen Couture, that the establish and regulate municipality of Kincardine Fire Department 2020 bylaw be deemed to be read a first, second, and third time, finally passed and numbered as bylaw 2020-162.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? And that carried. That's good.
Next is the shoreline protection. So this is moved by Jerry Glover, seconded by Bill Stewart, that council approve the shoreline protection works on municipal lands policy, and further that council authorize the mayor and CAO to execute the access and indemnification agreements and any other required documentation, and further that the policy be reviewed in May 2021.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
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 Opposed? And the motion carried.
Next is moved by Randy Ropel, seconded by Doug Kennedy, that the Integrity Commissioner Harold G. Elston 2020 bylaw be deemed to be read a first, second, and third time, finally passed and numbered as bylaw 2020-163.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? And the motion carried.
Next is the ammonia refrigeration. So the ammonia refrigeration SCS refrigeration tender acceptance bylaw be deemed to be read a first, second, and third time, finally passed and numbered as bylaw 2020-164. That's moved by Dave Kyler, seconded by Maureen Couture.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? And the motion carried.
And next is the Kincardine Physicians Group, and that will be moved by Dave Kyler, seconded by Maureen Couture. And that will be that council support the Kincardine physicians and encourage the South Bruce Gray Health Centre Board to respect the understanding of council and the physicians in the discussions that have surrounded the Kincardine site CT to date, and proceed with the purchase of the Drive CT scanner, and further that if the SBGHC board decision is to purchase the Edge Plus CT scanner, council host a public meeting to review the board's decision.
Any further discussion? No further discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? And the motion carried. Do we have any more? I think we've done a lot tonight. Okay. So we'll move to members of council general announcements, and I'll start with Deputy Mayor Ropel.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
All right. Councillor Couture.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Councillor Kyler.
It's, I just want to tell everybody that at our last SMART meeting, we will be paying less on our municipal rate for SMART for 2021 by about $25,000. So,
Very
you know,
good.
it's nice to know that you have a little bit of extra money sometimes. Other than that, I really don't have much to say.
I'm sure we'll
Very
maybe, it'll be hard, but we'll find a place for it. Thanks.
I'm sure.
Okay, Councillor Glover.
Jerry.
I think he's frozen. I'll come back. All right, Councillor
He
Hayden.
does look cold.
There he is.
Council. Okay, Jerry, are you there?
I have nothing, but we need a new reception antenna in the country.
Okay. Councillor Hayden.
Just in time for Christmas, actually a short 7 days ago, our landfill site is now accepting expanded polystyrene foam packaging. This is commonly referred to as styrofoam. And it's the packaging that comes with computers, electronics, appliances, toys, that rigid stuff. It's not packing peanuts, but it takes up a lot of volume when you put it in a garbage bag, but now we accept it as a recycled material out at the landfill site.
Good.
So that's my news.
Excellent.
Excellent. Yeah.
So you have to bring it there, Laura? You don't put it at the curb with the other recyclables?
It is not a curbside pickup thing, so it is something you're going to have to go. And I should also say, I've had a request to mention that we have a lot of people who love to do their trip to the dump, and that's my husband as well. But in COVID time, they're trying to reduce the numbers. So if you could put it at the end of the curb, you don't have to drive all the way out to Armo, and it keeps our numbers down at the dump, and the cash back and forth doesn't have to happen either. So that came from a ratepayer. There you go.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kennedy.
Yeah, a couple of things. Big brothers and big sisters ran into a couple of speed bumps, and they're not having their draw. So they did a mail out that I'm sure everybody's gotten the mail to. You can make a donation for them. So I won't be bothering you with tickets for this year. Hopefully it'll happen next year. Our 2021 community investment grants applications are open. They're going to be accepted till January 15th. 2021, and we want to be sure that groups realize that the eligibility standards are loosened. So don't be scared to apply, because you never know. So just if you failed in the past, just be sure to let people know that and all that is on our municipal website. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Ropel.
Gets two.
Yeah, you already did me, Ann. I had nothing to say.
Oh, I've got you listed here as councillor. I have to update my list. So Councillor Stewart, I'm having trouble. I'll get it right yet, Randy.
Oh, he gets 2 votes. I didn't know that.
I'll just make it quick. I'd like to acknowledge Bruce Power for their generous donation of $80,000 towards the improvement and upgrading of the Kincardine Trail. So way to go. And the trails will be in better shape next year with that 80,000. Thank you.
All right. And for myself, I attended or was invited by the Lieutenant Governor to go on a Zoom today to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Royal Commission on the Status of Women. And so, of course, the Lieutenant Governor gave a speech. That's her honor the Honorable Elizabeth Dowswell, and it was hosted by the Lieutenant Governor, but it was moderated by CTV's Lisa Laflamme. It was a wonderful presentation. They had people from back in that era, so it's the 50th anniversary. So some of the people that fought to get on that commission, because originally there weren't any women, maybe one or two in the Canadian Parliament. So it was going to be pretty well men on the commission. So it was very interesting. I found out near the end that there's going to be a YouTube link up within a week or so. If you want to watch it, I would highly recommend everybody watch it. The one, I know everybody's wanting to go, but I just want to tell you this one story of a Black woman at the time. So she had a job as a music teacher, loved her job, and I think it was around 1970. And she went to her principal and said to her principal she was pregnant. And her principal said, well, as soon as you begin to show, you have to hand in your resignation. So in 50 years, progress has been made in many fronts for women, and they described it today as a huge report that a lot of changes were built on the recommendations that came out of it. So I recommend it. I think even if you watch the first half hour or so, you will get the flavor of it. And I wondered why they were having it on a Monday, but it's 50 years ago today that report was tabled. So, Sharon, I forgot to ask you.
Nothing tonight.
Good, Sharon. I'm getting hungry. We'll give you more airtime another time. So the confirmatory bylaw.
So this is moved by Jerry Glover, seconded by Bill Stewart, and this is to confirm the proceedings of the meeting of Monday, December the 7th, and it will be bylaw 2021-64.
All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Motion to adjourn.
At council adjourn at 7:55 p.m. And that's moved by Randy Ropel, seconded by Doug Kennedy.
We made it under the deadline. All
Yep.
in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Good night, everyone. The motion
Good night.
carried.
Good night, everyone. Be safe. Next week.
The recording has stopped.